I am so excited to speak to Deborah Levy, the author of The Cost of Living, which I absolutely love. Deborah, thank you so much for talking to me today. The book kind of it kind of defies genre. I mean, it's probably described as a memoir in some ways, but it really feels so much more than that. How would you describe it?
I've called The Cost of Living, which is part of a trilogy. So Things I Don't Want to Know is the first one. And the things we don't want to know in my book are the things we know anyway, but we've kind of pushed down and sort of rather like a bill coming in that you don't want to open, but you know you have to. So that's kind of my 40s, early 40s, and the cost of living, 50s. And then my new book, the third in the trilogy, is called Real Estate. And that is, so I turned 60, and that looks at that year. So the three books really span 20 years. I called them living autobiographies. A kind of made up word because they're not written in retrospect. They're not written looking back wisely at a life in hindsight. They're written in the storm of life, in the present tense. So all of them are written in the present tense. And though some of them go back to childhood, that's not chronological.
Yeah, it's very beautiful. The time, and it really feels much more like consciousness of the associations between what you're reading and how you're seeing the world and what you're living, and then memories. It's very, very beautiful. Also, the way you talk about how we don't want our mothers to be dreamy, and a lot about kind of the invisibility of all of the work that mothers do, and what children demand of mothers, but then how it doesn't necessarily set you up for the surprise of being a mother and the discomfort in your family home.
That's absolutely right. I write here, we do not want mothers who gaze beyond us, longing to be elsewhere. We need her to be of this world, lively, capable, entirely present to our needs. Did I mock the dreamer in my mother and then insult her for having no dreams? So you know, I think that I discovered a lot about my mother and a lot about my relationship with her in the writing. It's as if at a really deep level in the writing of The Cost of Living. And I'm so sorry, really, that she's not here to, in particular, read this book. And I go on a little bit, if you don't mind.
Yes, please. It's beautiful to hear you read.
As the vintage story goes, it is the father who is the hero and the dreamer. He detaches himself from the pitiful needs of his women and strides out into the world to do his thing. He is expected to be himself. When he returns to the home that our mothers have made for us, he is either welcomed back into the fold or becomes a stranger who will eventually need us more than we will need him. Our mothers live with us in this living, and we blame her for everything because she is nearby. At the same time, we try not to collude with myths about her character and purpose in life. All the same, we need her to feel anxiety on our behalf. After all, our everyday living is full of anxiety. If we do not disclose our feelings to her, we mysteriously expect her to understand them anyway. And if she moves beyond us, comes close to being a self that is not at our service, she has transgressed from the mythic primal task of being our protector and nurturer. Yet if she comes too close, she suffocates us, infecting our fragile courage with her contagious anxiety. If our mother does a thing she needs to do in the world, we feel she has abandoned us. It is a miracle she survives our mixed messages written in society's most poisoned ink. It is enough to drive her mad. And so there we go. And one of the, so my mother is a major character, not a minor character in this book. And I sort of developed that theme to look at how hard it is to actually claim our own desires, to not, how we have a talent. The vintage story would be women have a talent for really abandoning their own desires and serving everybody else's desires. So there's a sort of riff in the book about developing other talents. How about a talent for not doing that really at all?
It's so overwhelming, exactly as you described, the kind of societal expectation or the tropes of what happens to a woman scorned, or what happens to a woman after children, and all of, as you say, this kind of inevitable madness that it leads to, but not surprisingly. And you talk a lot about, knew very early on that you had your own authorial voice and could control the story of your writing, but then had to learn it in life. And so how do you think that that kind of relates? Like, what are the tools of writing that we can use in living?
I wonder if I wonder if one can. I mean, to think deeply and freely, to embrace paradox, contradictions. Most importantly, in the cost of living, there is this idea, I think, that's still quite prevalent, that girls and women can't be a whole number of things at the same time: powerful, vulnerable, soft, and loud. Angry and very calm. Now, these are so obvious. I know they're very obvious, but there is this idea that, you just have to be kind of strong and articulate and goal driven and emotionally literate and all that. Well, I'm not for that. Just be what you are, feel what you feel. And that's the point of the cost of living. So in terms of writing, in Things I Don't Want to Know, which is the first one in the trilogy, I write that to become a writer, I had to learn to interrupt, to speak up, to speak louder, and then just to speak in my own voice, which is not loud at all. So that is the journey of life, to speak in our own voice, which is what it is. And most of all, there's a very good note from the poet Allen Ginsberg that I had written down really in my late 20s, and still to this day, I think it's a great note. Notice what you notice. So what is it that you are paying attention to? So you'll know this as an actor, and as a writer's only as interesting as how and what she's paying attention to. So you can have sort of, you can make incredible sentences, you can have read 25,000 clever books, but really, if I'm not interested in what a writer is noticing or paying attention to, I don't care. I just don't care. I'll just put the book down. So notice what you notice is really a very profound, deceptively simple note. Very helpful to me.
Oh, I will be putting that on my desk. That is very, very, very helpful.